We are live. Welcome to another episode of Unscripted, and I have the great pleasure to introduce John McCabe, who is a great and close friend of mine. And we've planned this for a long time, but we're both seems to be super busy, and I very much appreciate you coming in today.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining.
Appreciate you having me. And I echo the sentiments. You're a great friend, and we have done a lot of great things together over the years. So thank you for having me.
And the reason why I like doing this specifically is because it allows me to get an opportunity to get a glimpse of more than just business conversation, personal conversation, but really to get to know you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So why don't we start with that? Walk me down through memory lane. Talk to me about what you've done so far and how you got you to where you are today.
Sure. I have been in sales for 25 years. The past 10 years, I've been in channels, partner sales. My direct sales life, I was heavily involved in technical sales. I was usually a top performer at the companies I work for. I was number one rep at EMC back in 2013. And in 2014, I should say, I decided to go into channel, and I've been building channel programs specifically focused on the security resellers and managed security service providers. And I've worked for several startups over that 10-year period, helping them build programs that are successful and generate revenue from partnerships.
So, John, like if you could pinpoint, and this is an unscripted conversation. John did not have any of the these questions up front. So let me ask you this. What attributes do you feel that you carry that makes you successful in this business? And it's because I can tell you there's a lot of people that are trying to do this, and it's not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of difficulties. And so just give me kind of a high level of what made you successful. And then specifically, the stars have to align, like in terms of your quality and attributes and characteristics, and also align with the kind of the job and what the job entails.
Right. Good question. One thing, I'm motivated and passionate about what I do. I'm organized. Follow-up is a very big thing for me. And when you're dealing with sales and partnerships, follow-up is key. If partner brings an opportunity to you and you ignore it, you might miss out on an opportunity, and you also miss out on the chance to work further with the partner. I really am very organized and rely heavily on my follow-up skills. Outside of that, I think I have a pretty good personality, and I get along with a lot of people. I treat my partners like clients, but I also treat them as friends. I don't ever despair my partnerships. They are very important to me. If they need something, I'm going to get it for them, right? I don't hesitate. I fight for partners. I've had to fight a lot of battles internally for extra margin or to bring a partner into a deal so we can expand the relationship at that client. And sometimes I take my lumps internally. For a partner to succeed, they need someone who's going to be a champion for them.
Yeah, and it's all based on relationships and you built through the years, and the trust and the acumen, business acumen, but also personal acumen in terms of be able to treat people like you wanted to be treated. So let me ask you this. In terms of sales and sales enablement and channel, things evolved in the past several years. But before we jump into that, I would love to cover what does the channel program entails. What does that even mean for these people that are not fully aware of it? Because everybody's familiar with, okay, I go out to a company, I buy direct from the company,
right?
And it's the direct model. But there are some other models that have developed through the years. So if you don't mind providing a quick primer of what that means.
Sure. Channel or a partnership program involves, number one, a vendor who has a product and a partner who wants to resell that product to make a margin on it, right? And a basic partner program should have, at the very least, a partner value proposition, something that ties you and the partner together. They can understand how to sell you. They understand what you do in a 2 to 3 sentence value prop. Outside of that, you need to build a structure, a framework around how you interact with the partner. And that includes a contract, how you work with the partner. It includes enablement, which is very important. You have to train partners so they understand your product and they can go out and sell you without you necessarily being there with them to sell. Then you need to have a margin, some attractive margin that, knowing the partner wants to sell your product and they can make 25, 30 points on the deal, that's important to them. And then lastly, support, being able to support the partner in your efforts. They go in and talk to a client about your product and they're stuck on some aspect of what you do. They want to know they have somebody to call and bring in to help close the gap there and help close the sale. So a program in itself is a structure of a framework that kind of guides you to align with the partner and be able to sell your product with them.
And let me ask you this: why do you even need a channel program? Why can't companies just go out and sell direct to their, to their potential clients? What's the need there?
Great question. You don't need a channel. You could go out and sell direct, but you're going to be hiring a lot of people, paying them salaries, paying them benefits, going through very long sales cycles because they're going to have to be out there prospecting, knocking on doors, calling, and uncovering the deals to close. Whereas with a channel or partnership, you have an army of sales reps who, once they understand your product and like it and want to sell it, they're going to be exponentially increasing your pipeline by the conversations they're having with their clients. Adding a channel is like adding your own sales army to your own sales organization without having to pay them, other than a margin that you pay on or a commission on a deal. A lot of startups, and I've worked for several startups in the cybersecurity space, they're very keen on channel. I think the board of these companies say, hey, let's get sales growing fast. Go out and put a channel in place because they understand it grows your revenue exponentially. Now you got to do it right. You can't be mistreating your channel partners. You can't take a deal to them and then bring it out and take it direct because you don't think they're adding value or you want to make more money on the deal. That'll never work. Your channel program won't succeed. So you want to make it so it's very beneficial for both of you to go out and sell your product.
I have so many questions and I try to keep them in the right order. Let me ask you this. I am a CEO of a company, a board of director of a, relatively speaking, small to mid-sized startup. And I listen to you and I say, wow, this is great, John. Let's do this. Awesome. It sounds like great. What do you mean I can have a sales team, an extension to my sales team without actually paying them? It sounds amazing. Let's do this.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
What's the steps I need to take? And it's anything else. It's not easy. Like it's to be able to turn a new channel program together and make it successful. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of heavy lifting, and sometimes a lot of runway to create that. So walk me through that process of from inception to finally becoming successful and generate revenue through the channel.
First and foremost, as an organization, you have to be willing to put the channel in place and stick with it, right? You can't go in halfway. You can't want a channel, but take all your deals direct, right? And a lot of times what talk to, companies, I talk to them about 100% channel sales strategy. And what that means is every deal goes through a channel partner, and that's going to accelerate your deals and your pipeline exponentially. But from a starting point, the executives have to decide an important go-to-market strategy that they want to put forth in their sales organization. And then they have to go out and look for a person like myself who has built the programs, knows how to build a framework out, knows how to recruit partners, knows how to enable them, knows how to build pipeline, and can grow revenue through a channel. Once they find that person like me will come in and do all the entry work, putting together all the programs, putting together the rules of engagement. That takes anywhere from 2 to 3 months just to get everything in line. Social media, your contracts, everything that you want to do to grow your channel. Once that's in place, it's probably a good idea not to have a single person running channels and doing everything, because you miss opportunities. That one person can't be in every place all the time. If you build a team of 2 to 3 channel managers that are out in the field, they can be in front of the partners more rapidly and more aggressively than someone like me who's running everything and can't be everywhere at one place. So you build a team and you basically let that team help your sales organization get connected to your partners and help them to uncover opportunities and to grow that revenue, right? That whole process can take anywhere from 9 to 12 months to build and to start to see results. I don't mean just revenue closing, results of partners taking to your product and learning it and wanting to bring you in and talking to customers and building pipelines. It's not an instant snap your fingers and you have a channel and it works. You need to put the time and effort in, and it does take 9 to 12 months for this to happen.
And some of the challenges, I would love to double click on some of the challenges you actually described. So one of the areas, for example, is you are the manufacturer, you are the vendor, you have the expertise. It's hard sometimes to get somebody up to speed, especially when we don't work with widgets. A lot of it is complicated, a lot of moving parts on the technology side. How do you bring a partner up to speed with the technology, and not even that, to have a better understanding of where does it fit in the overall kind of market, where's the value proposition? All of that creates quite a bit of challenge from the technical side as well as the sales side. How do you get a partner up to speed?
So that's something you want to do early on in a relationship when you're recruiting a partner. You want to sit down, and once you've shown the product to your partner and they understand at least the functionality, you want to sit down and put together a business plan and understand what you're looking for, what your ideal customer profile is, what their ideal customer profile is. If they don't match, maybe there'll be a problem trying to sell together. But if they do match, and typically they do, partners are selling to anywhere from 500 employees up to 10,000 employees, just like a vendor like myself would do. So you want to understand their ideal customer profile as long as they match with yours, and then put together some goals that you set to go and attack the market and look at those ideal customer profiles and sell to them, right? Enablement is really key. That's probably, I think, the hardest part in any channel program is to wrangle all your partner reps and SEs and anybody that needs to know what your product does to train them. What I've been doing is implementing video training and giving partners the ability to go at their own pace, to see the video product, get an understanding of it, and then setting up a basic certification test for them. Ultimately, I'd love to have an LMS capability and utilizing a partner portal, and I'm looking into that. But having a way for a partner to go out and access information on your product so they could sell it is important. And then once they've been certified and trained, you kind of circle back and bump up against what your business plan was and see if you can actually go out and execute on it. You should be able to. Having more, I want to say common, or having conversations with your partners on a regular basis, I should say, is really important. I worked at a company where we didn't prospect to customers. We prospected to our partner reps. And we had four of probably the biggest, best partners in the cybersecurity space that we work with: Optiv, GuidePoint, Defy, and Tavora, right? And all our reps did was go through the list of the regional partner reps and call them on a daily basis and say, hey, just want to touch base, see how you're doing, talk to XYZ customer. I'm trying to get into ABC customer. And it really worked. We saw a 300% increase in our deal registrations by prospecting to our partner reps. And in this day and age, I'm sure you're in sales, it's really hard to pick up a phone and get someone on the line to talk to about your product. Forget email and LinkedIn DMing. People ignore that. I get bombarded with LinkedIn prospecting all day long, and I don't pay attention to it because it doesn't really benefit me, right? You're talking to partner reps. They're the trusted advisors to the clients that you want to get into. So if you're talking to them and they're like, my customer is just talking to me about Teams and Slack and some of the communication channels that he's looking to protect, and I happen to have a product that does that, they're going to remember that. And they're going to like, let me call John. He has a product that can do that. And that's how you get in, and you give them the deal reg all the time. If a partner's talking to someone and you're talking to someone, I always weigh on the side of give the partner the deal reg, make them feel really happy to be working with you, and they get a little extra margin, and you grow your opportunities that way. But if you're prospecting outside and you're having a struggle and you're building SDR teams, BDR teams, and they do a good job, don't get me wrong, but I think we saw more success just prospecting to partner reps.
And let me ask you this. We don't operate in a bubble, meaning that these partners have multiple products to sell, multiple products, sometimes services, and
300
so on.
or 400 or 1,000 line items sometimes.
How do you make sure that when they get up in the morning, they go out to see clients, maybe some either new clients or existing clients? How do you make sure that they have you, what's a kind of a mind share that they think about your particular product versus someone else's?
Partner mindshare is like always on my mind. When I wake up every morning, I'm thinking, how do I keep my face in front of the partner, my product in front of the partner, right? And what I recommend for all of our sales reps prospect normally, but I do encourage them to prospect to partners at my current company. And I really want them to keep the buzz about what we do in the ear of the partners. Outside of that, newsletters to the partners, highlighting win wires that you've done, successful deals that you've closed, doing webinars. We sponsor and co-sponsor webinars with our partners. That draws in some of their customer base to hear about our product, right? Doing events. Events are the way to connect with partners, but also it's a way for you to connect with their clients, right? So doing events really helps. Doing happy hours, taking them to lunch, taking them to coffee, just doing little things. When a partner talks to me about an opportunity, or they sit in on a demo that we're doing on a new part of our product, I send them a Starbucks coffee gift card, just thanking them for helping or being there, thanking them for the partnership. So you got to do little things that really keep them thinking about you. And there's a lot of buzz and a lot of noise, and there's so many different vendors that are trying to get at them every day. They call it vendor fatigue. And I can sympathize, like I'm sure, because we ping them all the time. We want their attention. And that's 400 times they get that every day. So it's important that you also establish a close relationship with a partner, either from a sales standpoint or an executive standpoint. I try to get involved and connected at the very top of the partners that we work with, and it's worked very well for me. But I think one other thing that you need to do is to make sure that you are, treating them with respect, and you show that you really mean you want them involved. Say what you mean and do what you say, right? That's how we try to get partner mindshare. Just really make sure we're doing the little things blocking and tackling at a base level just to make them aware of what we're doing and want to work with us.
And there's different levels of partnership, meaning some partners will be comfortable with just a referral, the potential new client, and then if the deal closed, you take it from there, the deal closed, they write you a check on the back end, whatever the commission is. Some clients would start the process and have a bit of an oversight to that transaction, and then they get commission. Again, it's on your vendor books, but then you get commission on the back end. Some clients, specifically MSSP, for example, are full and hands-on, meaning that it's almost like a black box where you don't even know sometimes what the client is, or potentially have minimal knowledge. The deal closed, they manage it, they write you a check, it's on their books. Talk to me about the kind of levels of
MSSPs are customer fast, but God.
So talk to me about kind of those levels of different levels of participation from the channel side. And I'm assuming, again, as a channel professional, there are various different ways to handle different type of partnership. And then maybe for certain vendors, one type of partnership is an ideal versus another. And then again, there's also levels of investment associated from getting to the least minimal participation to all the way to fully managed service.
Yeah. Let me just front that with my approach to channel, right? I've taken over programs that needed to be rebuilt because they're just not working and they were a mess. And the reason why they're a mess is because a lot of times channel executives think, sign up as many partners as you can. That's going to like exponentially create more pipeline for us. And it doesn't work because there's a cost of signing a partner up, and it comes in the enablement, the training, the relationship building, right? You can't do that for 1,000 partners. So what I've done is I focus in on 4 to 5 partners that we can pay a lot of attention to. And typically there'll be resellers, but then there are some that are MSSPs, very large MSSPs that we will transact differently. We'll create services with them, but we'll also resell with them. And that way, when we are trying to bring a deal to a partner, our reps have 4 or 5 partners that they can go, this is in Arizona. We're going to bring it to our Guide Point rep because we know they've closed deals with us and they're hungry and we really like working with them, right? Automatically, boom, we go to Guide Point with that, right? I try to make sure we're very focused there. Now, different types of partners, there's alliance integration type partnerships that if you're integrating, your product works very well together. It's an easy sale. They'll sell you, you'll sell them. I like to push those types of deals to a resell partner, push our technologies to one reseller. They get 2 commission checks and they love that, right? There's the traditional reseller. All they're doing is going out and looking for their customers for solutions that help them get better or be protected or just make them overall more productive, I should say. So we work with those partners. There's managed security service providers and managed service providers. They really are looking for a product that helps them with their customers. And I typically work with them to say, put a service around us. We want you to be our preferred vendor for services around our product. And that really rings true with them. And they like that because now they have a solution. And if we get a lead where they say, hey, we would like our product managed, we just call up our managed service provider partner and say, hey, got another lead for you guys. And then lastly, there's like the GSIs and the hyperscaler type partners where it's a very long process to get involved with them and to find the opportunities and really grow. But they're so beneficial because they're usually very large scale opportunities. The GSIs, they're very involved and want to know every aspect of how your product works and how it can help benefit their customers. They're very, very deliberate in what they do, right? So those partnerships take a little bit longer than a resell partnership. So we try to have those types of partners in our program. But again, really focus in on just 4 to 5 that really help us do the most and make the most out of what we have, right? And it's worked very well. I don't have a really complicated margin play. There's always the gold, silver, bronze programs, and gold you get 10 extra margin points, and silver you get 5, and bronze you're just getting the regular margin. And I always found that the little guys, the bronze partners, always wanted the bigger margin, right? But we're like, hey, you got to make $1 million of revenue with us, and then we'll give you that extra 10 points. It just is too messy. And reps didn't understand. Are they a bronze partner or are they a gold partner? I'm like, you know what? Let's get rid of that. It's 2 margins. Deal reg, 30 points. If we bring you into a deal, 10 to 15 points. And I usually let all reps know, if we're bringing a deal to a partner, they're typically really happy about that, and they don't really fight on a margin. They're really just, hey, I can go in and I could sell other things in that client. I'll take whatever margin you give me. So I give our reps that flexibility to say, I'll give them 10 points, not 15 on this deal. And they're usually pretty happy with that because they see bigger things coming out of that lead, right? So that's where we try to focus, make it simple. I don't really like to overcomplicate things where everybody's scratching their head like, man, what do I get in my margin? What kind of level am I? And the reps don't know what to do. So I like to make it very simple.
And sometimes it's not clear, meaning that it's not clear so much what type of partner is going to be. Meaning that potentially they can start with a referral partner. And then as things progress, as you ink the first transaction, they maybe say, oh, this is interesting. We just closed a deal. Tell me more.
Yeah.
So how often does that happen? Do you prefer to immediately go after the goal, meaning that this is the type of partnership I'm looking for? Or sometimes you just say, hey, let's take baby steps. Let's close the first transaction, give you some 10 points, and then we potentially progress further.
Yeah. So that's something I think about when we're trying to build, relationships, right? Referral partners are great, but typically referral partners really don't want too much involvement. They just want to give you the lead and say, just give me my 10 points on the deal when it closes and I'm happy, right? So we don't really spend a ton of time with referrals unless they say, hey, I got more customers. I want to advance our relationship. And then we'll start to talk about, the framework that we laid out earlier. I find that I know the partners that I want to work with, right? I've been in this space for 10 years. I've been in cybersecurity for 10 years, right? I know who the partners are. I have really strong relationships with some partners in the space. So I know who to go to, and they know what I'm all about. If I say I'm bringing them deals, if I say I'm 100% channel, they know that's what we are. And I stick to that. But there are partners I've never worked with before, and I usually like to talk to them and understand what they're trying to accomplish. And if I get a feeling they're hungry and they really want to work with someone, and they really have opportunity, they're dying to get involved with us, I will look at them and try to bring them on. I don't really consider them a focused partner. I consider them more like a regional partner. And I encourage our reps to work with regional partners to fill in the gaps. But I think smaller partners, I like the small partners from the fact that they're hungry, right? And they're like us. I'm hungry. I'm a vendor. I want to sell, right? So if they have that common hunger, usually it works out really well. You got to, like some partners, you really have to work. You have to bring them a lot of deals just to get paper. And I get it. They want to make sure you're legit and you're going to be around and you're going to sell with them and make them money. But there's a lot of work to be done with some vendors or some partners, I should say. Small partners, they typically they'll get you involved quickly and they want to see how much they can make.
And there are situations where you mentioned the common goal, let's go sell. But I have to tell you, sometimes there's a transaction on the table or potential transaction, right? And maybe a partner will brought it into the vendor. And at some point in time, the customer say, okay, this is great. I'm going to buy. And maybe they're starting to pricing negotiation. Maybe they're starting to size a deal or whatever. But at that point, the vendor says, hold on for a second. They're already buying us. What do we need? What do we need the channel now? Because it's almost like they're running together when his common goal is to get the client. But once the client says, let's go buy this, the vendors sometimes say, oh, we're already buying. Let's let's give some points to the channel. I'll get rid of them.
You see all these gray hair on my head. I deal with that situation a lot. What I try to coach my sales reps to do is to get a partner involved early and often. A lot of times they push back and say, oh, it's the initial call. It's too soon. It's not too soon. If the partner's there, they might uncover that they've worked with this client before and they know their procurement process and they know how to get all the ins and outs of getting a deal closed, right? But I encourage them to get involved early so we don't have a situation where a quote has already been presented and then, oops, we got to bring a partner in and we got to squeeze margin. Somebody's got to take a hit on the overall quote. We have to shave our overall price to fit the margin, or the partner might have to take less margin, right? And I don't like to be in that situation. If we are involved early, the process moves along and they understand every step of the way where we're at. When it comes time to quote, I should say, we let the partner quote it and they have all the margin and we have all our pricing in place, right? So there is no issue. That's what they call channel conflict, or one of them. When you have to update your quote to the customer because you had to squeeze a partner in, that never works. It's always just too much agita for everyone. So I'm a big proponent of getting partners involved early and often. It's a benefit for, if anyone's listening to this and they're trying to get channel put in place and they want to make it work, the best piece of advice I could give you is make sure your partner's involved early. Your reps will not regret it. It goes a long way, not just helping you close that deal, but now your reps or your partner reps are going to say, that was really easy and I made a nice commission check. I'm going to go bring them into other customers that I have, right? That's the benefit. That's the value.
And there's some other hairy situations, like, for example, there's a transaction. All of a sudden, the client tells you, listen, this is great, but I need 3 quotes. Or a situation where, you know what, I love these partners. Thanks for bringing them in, but I have a contract in place already with this partner. So I much rather buy from this partner as opposed to the one you just brought in to work with. How do you deal with all of that? Again, this is a situation where it's not hypothetical. This stuff happened to you all the time.
This is real all the time. The 3 quotes, typically what happens if a partner has deal regged this opportunity, they get the deal protected, right?
And John, for those who are not familiar with the terminology of deal reg, you're referring specifically for partner registering the deal, sometimes in a portal, sometimes verbally, just saying, hey, I got, this is mine.
Correct. It's a partner bringing an opportunity to me as a vendor and putting it on record that this deal came from them, right? So a partner that has deal protection and the client says, I need 3 quotes, we will go out to our other partners, but we won't give them any more than 10 points of margin for the deal. We're introducing them into it, but we are really sticking with that partner that has deal reg. That's our ride or die for that opportunity, right? I think you mentioned that there's a client already has a partner and we introduce a partner in. That's another channel conflict that I try to avoid early on when our SDRs are trying to set the call or our reps are having that initial conversation. I have coached them to ask their clients or their prospects, like I gave them a script. We're a 100% channel sales organization. We do everything through partners. Every deal must go through a partner. And I have them ask, do you work with any partners? And if they say yes, we're like, great, who is it? And we go and we contact them and they come along for the ride for that sale. If they say, no, I don't have any partners I work with, we're like, great, we work with GuidePoint, Optiv, Defy, Tavora, X, Y, Z, whoever, right? And we say, would you mind if we introduce you to GuidePoint? And typically the answer is yes, we're fine with that. Let's talk to them. Right. So it's very rare that I've seen us introduce a partner when a client has an existing partner. Right. And if that's ever the case, there's a conversation you have to have with the partner that you brought in. Listen, we didn't know they have XYZ partner that they want to work with. So here's what we'll do. We'll just give you like a finder's fee. We'll give them like 5 points on the deal just to make them happy. I don't want them to go away unhappy. It was our mistake, but I want to make sure they're right, they're whole. So we'll give them like a small commission off the deal just for their time.
Yeah. And John, I'd like to discuss these real situations, and I'll give you another one. Customer comes back and say, hey, this is great. Thanks very much for the quote. But my boss is going to kill me if we buy a list, or if we buy 10% off. I want 50% off, or I want 75% off. And this is what I can do. And now we're in a situation as a vendor that you have to provide a larger discount, and it has to go out to the executive management to get it approved.
Yep.
And so on. How do you then work with the channel then? Because a potential 30% margin can now shrink significantly.
Yeah.
And you as a channel manager, you're between a rock and a hard place. On one side, you have the executives that want to get their margins. And on the other side, you have the channel that potentially receive much less of a margin. And it's really important for them. Every point matters. And so again, you're between a rock and a hard place. You're trying to satisfy everyone.
Yeah. Another real world example that you have to deal with. So typically what happens if a client needs us to sharpen our pencil on our quote, and we've already quoted through a channel partner, so there's margin built in, we'll have a conversation with that partner. Say, listen, we've got to cut back our overhead price with your margin included, but listen, we don't want to be the only ones taking the hit. So we're going to shave your margin down a little bit so we could fit this all in and get the deal. And on the next deal, we'll make you whole with that percentage that we had to chop up. We'll give you that in the next deal, but we got to make sure pricing is right so we're not having to go back and do this exercise. But again, I don't want to make the partners suffer because we need to reduce our costs. I think with my executive management team and their understanding of channel, situations like that don't hurt us, don't make us feel less competent working with channel. They understand. And we want deals. We want to close deals. I think that's the partner and the vendor. They have the same common mission, get the deal done, right? And whatever it takes to get the deal done. And I think you go to a partner, they understand that. I've really ever met a partner rep that would hold fast on getting their exact margin on the deal. So we have to take more off our price. It doesn't happen. They're usually pretty understanding. They work with you on that.
And how do you deal with situation, for example, that this similar situation, right? One is that the customer buys, let's say, $10,000 the first transaction, or $50,000, and then after 6 months they buy X amount of license, and then maybe 6 months later on they have to expand it to additional licenses, and now the transaction is twice the size. And then also that can also be true for a second year, third year, where there's an upsell, cross-sell, whatever the case may be. How do you deal with the kind of partners in that situation, and in terms of margins, in terms of transaction, and the situation between the channel and the vendor itself?
Yeah. So look, a lot of that comes down to deal registration. If that customer was a lead from a partner and they deal registered the initial order with us, we give them the same margin on every corresponding deal. We give partners renewals. That's lifeblood for a lot of partners. They want the recurring renewal business, right? They want to keep those customers like we do. So they will, come renewal time, partners really work hard with us to help get that renewal. So we give them the same margin on repeat business and renewals, right? Because we want to make them whole. I love multi-deal transaction customers. Like a customer wants to buy in time. That's great, because then that partner's like, oh man, so it's just one customer that has 5 orders over a 12, 14, 16-month period. That's great. Now I know I could talk to other customers about that. They're willing to do that, and I get that margin every time. So again, it's helping to benefit your overhead pipeline, because these reps understand how you do business, and they can bring you into more opportunities that way.
And let's talk a bit about the post-sale as well. There's importance there for both the channel and as well as the vendor. Once the sales is done, it's sometimes super tough because everybody's ADD. Like the sales team is like, move on to the next transaction. That is true for both the vendor and the channel. And then you have a customer that needs some of that continuous loving and hand-holding to be happy. How do you balance that out and make sure that everybody's in touch and the customer is not falling through the cracks and all of a sudden, okay, everybody moved on from there?
Yeah. There's a couple things you could discuss there. Number one, typically when a sale is done, we do own the relationship. Sometimes partners have better relationships with a client that we just closed a deal with. They really co-own the relationship with us in that regard, but we'll do all the work to get the customer, up and running and satisfied. Again, I encourage our reps, as part of their daily prospecting, if they've closed a deal with a partner rep, keep in touch with them. Let them know what's going on. If they're trying to build more revenue with that client on their other products that they sell, it's benefiting them to know what's going on, right? And they might hear something that's, oh, I could sell them identity access management now because I know they have an issue with that, right? So communication is really critical in partnerships. If communication breaks down on either side, things can go wrong. But we will typically own that customer relationship for our product, but we want the partner included. Now, a corner case is if we have services with that partner, like we can build an implementation service with a partner. They will own that initial implementation with us, right? Because they're going to be doing the work to turn them up. So it's just, if you don't include your partners on any step of the process or post-sale process, it's not a great approach. It's not a good way to do things, because once you lose that communication, that's when things go wrong. And that's why you also need to have a quarterly business review with your partners. Sit down with them and understand what's closed, progress on these closes, what the customer's saying, what they're doing, you might hear something that the customer needs that your partner can sell them. So it's important those quarterly business reviews tie everybody together, and it continues like an open communication with them.
And there are sometimes difficult conversations to be held, especially when we're talking about, again, not hypothetically speaking, there are cases where a transaction closed, the delivery team is on site or remote and trying to fix everything to the better of the client. And then shit hits the fan. Something happened, and either the product is not performing or there were things that happened within the customer's environment that created it. And all of a sudden there are a bunch of people trying to blame each other. The vendors blaming the channel, the customer is blaming everybody. And again, sometimes as a channel manager, you're between a rock and a hard place where you have to deal with everyone's frustrations. And again, you as somebody who's thinking about revenue, you have to make sure everybody's happy. How do you deal with these difficult situations?
I think it's important that you listen to both sides of the story and understand what's going wrong. I'm the channel leader for my company, and
John, let me just say this. I have to get you to say to without providing the actual details. But listen, you got tons of stories. Like, I can't imagine the things you've dealt with in your career. Like, maybe just every once in a while, just bring in a story of something that happened in your past, because again, without divulging the details, maybe obfuscate some of the details, but you've come across these situations, right?
Oh,
so maybe
God, I got
Go
a
ahead.
great one. I'm not going to name names, but it is a very close technical integration alliance partner that we had. And there were issues with our side and there were issues with their side, and customers were complaining. And one of the reps from our partner company, one of the top reps, very high energy, the type AA plus sales guys, he somehow, it was my second day on the job, and somehow he got my phone number and called me and was reading me the riot act about issues that our product was giving to his customer. And I had to get involved and find out what was going wrong. And it ended up, it was a simple API issue that got resolved, right? But things continued to go south with that rep talked badly about us, and I had to do a lot of damage control. And it got to a point where I was reporting on a weekly basis to the CEO of our integration partner and my CEO, giving them progress on what we were doing. I had to do a lot of Band-Aid fixing for the relationship. And ultimately it paid off because my counterpart at the partner, he and I basically agreed we had to correct this so we could keep selling. And it worked out beautifully. I got involved with our support team. They helped with all the break fixes. We had a weekly call with their support team. It was a mission. It took up a lot of time, my life for the first 6 months on the job. But it ultimately paid off because things got better. Reps started to feel better. I went on a campaign and tried to talk to their sales leadership and their reps. I went out and did some events in their offices and talked about what went wrong and what we did right and how we're maneuvering now. And it actually worked. We started to see more deals coming through. In a situation like that, you really can't point fingers. You just got to get in and fix the problem. And the more fingers you point and the more aggravation you cause each other, fix things. It just makes it worse. As much as it was painful, and I probably cursed out that partner more times than I would have liked to in that 6 months, but it worked out. And they're a great partner of ours, and we've transacted a lot of business with them.
And what about situations like, for example, when you're in a transaction, and again, not hypothetically speaking, there's a situation where the partner has more than one horse, meaning you are a vendor, but then they say, oh, I have a transaction and I definitely want to win this. So maybe I'll bring in two other vendors and it doesn't really matter to me who wins. And then you find out as a channel manager that there is a kind of, not a conflict of interest. Everybody's moving towards their goal of selling. How do you deal with that? And then subsequently, have you had a chance or the need to quote unquote fire a channel partner?
That's a great question. Let's take the first part of the question. I have worked with partners that will either bring me into a deal or we bring them into a deal and we're like confident the customer wants us and we're bringing them in. But like you said, they have multiple horses in the game, in the race, and they know our competitors and they go out and they margin hunt, right? They margin shop and they're like, hey, I got this customer and they're looking at XYZ. What's the margin you could give me? And eventually, since the partner may have a better relationship at the client side, they whisper in their ear like, hey, John's competition is a much better solution because it might not be because ours is better, but it's better for them because they're getting more margin, right? And I don't like those situations. And I know the reps who've done that, and I know who you are, and I won't do business with you again. But I really think it's just the ugliness of partnerships. Sometimes that happens. The majority, like 99.9% of the partner reps that I work with and partners, they're awesome. And we have a great relationship, but there are sometimes, those margin hunters. Now, have I ever had to fire a partner? Yes, but not because of something like that. It's more because they're not helping us grow our business. And when you get into partnership, it's a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. I'm not feeding you leads all day long. You're not feeding me leads all day long. It should be mutual. We should be able to uncover opportunities together. And if a partner is just not doing enough, it just doesn't make sense to continue. That's why I have focused partner lists, right? We only work with the partners we know are going to help us move the needle. The ones that won't, it's just a waste of our time. I'm not going to send my channel managers to spend time with them and take them to lunch and do the things you need to do if they're not generating any pipeline. It just doesn't work. So we've had to get rid of some partners in that regard. And it's never a pleasant story or pleasant conversation, but when it comes down to it, we're here to grow business and make money. And it's like anything, any sales job. If you're not selling, you're going to be out on the street.
And how do you deal with the fact that this is a very incestuous industry, meaning people move around, and then if you leave on bad terms, then potentially that can hurt you in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing what kind of long memory people have. There are cases
Partners
where
is
somebody
special.
got burnt on a transaction. Yeah, they got burnt on a transaction with a certain vendor or a certain individual. And 10 years later, they're not going to take the risk. How do you deal with that? How do you make sure that this just doesn't follow you?
So I'll give you a really good example. When I was at FireEye, I was a national channel manager at FireEye, and I supported GuidePoint and Presidio. Those are my two big national partners. And I came in and they wouldn't work with us. They weren't happy with a couple of reps that were taking deals away. They'd bring them a deal, and then at the last minute, they'd take the deal away from the partner. And they were not happy about that. So I really had to go in and I used to carry around a little first aid kit to every meeting. And I'd be like, I got bandages. If there's any wounds, I'm here to heal them. Right. And got to laugh, but they understood I was there to make things better. And I really had to work hard to make things better. I had to convince those reps to keep the deals with the partners and get them closed. And you know something? It worked out. It really worked out. I ended up being like head rep of the year because my partners were generating the most opportunity and revenue of anyone. It's hard work to do that. But I think if you build trust and the partners know you're saying what you mean and you mean what you say, it can help repair the damage. I'm not saying they don't forget. They will always bring it up to your face. I remember when you're at FireEye, and so took that big deal away from me. I still remember that check that didn't come to me. I get it, but that's the past. Let's move forward. I'm all about keeping the relationships healthy. I built a reputation in that cybersecurity channel space of someone that means what they say, right? That's important. And not to say that I've seen colleagues who can't overcome those types of situations and partners will not work with them. And I feel bad because they're missing out on opportunity and missing out on working with great partners.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me ask you another question that's about the difficulties of running the channels. Vendors live and die by their forecast. And there's a couple issues with the channel. The channel is, a lot of times, the transaction is behind almost like a cloak of information that you don't necessarily get from the channel.
Yep.
And now you have the executive on one end looking to get a forecast that is predictable, sustainable, and accurate. But then you as a channel manager or the program manager, you have to go and get all that information from the channel. And sometimes you have to make a decision whether the information is real or not, whether I can forecast it, and make sure that there's no discrepancies between what the channel is telling you and what you're providing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Talk to me about that kind of dynamic between the forecasting in the real world and then getting the information from the channel.
Yeah. So I report to the CRO and we talk frequently about partner opportunities and We have weekly calls with our reps to discuss what's going on. And I have one-on-ones with my reps to understand what the deals are and how they're moving. But I think that comes down to deal registration once again. With deal registration, I have some rules of engagement with partners. Register a deal with us. I'm going to look at the opportunity first and talk to my rep and say, hey, Bob from XYZ partner just registered this deal. And do you know anything about it? Has he talked to you about it? And they're like, no, but I know I've been prospecting there, so I'd like to talk to them further. So we'll have a conversation with the partner rep about it. And if they really understand our product and understand the use case and it fits, we'll approve the deal registration. Now, typically I'll give spiffs to partners. It's like $500 for a deal reg, but they have to deal reg and then get us a first meeting complete before they get the spiff. If we go to a POC, they get $250. If we close the deal, they get another $250. So they get $1,000 for helping us with a deal, right? And their SEs get $1,000 as well, right? For helping us with POC and getting it closed. So I want to make sure that deal is real. And that's why I'm glad you brought this up, because pipeline and forecasting, it could be screwy if you let partners bring deals just to register a deal, hold something that they think is going to happen. We've eliminated that. We make sure it's a real opportunity before we push it into Salesforce, before we start working on it. So our pipeline is a lot cleaner and we're not really dealing with garbage, right?
And you alluded to have a focused list of partners. Do you do that from a geographical area, from a vertical area? Do you have any preferences? And what would you say for a company that likes to expand and potentially is, successful in Ohio or the Northeast, and then want to expand to other areas and internationally as well? How do you balance that kind of focus list with the potential or the ability to be successful in certain areas and certain verticals?
The focus partner list that I put together, they're all national partners. That way, our reps are dispersed nationally. There's East, Central, and West. We always have that partner in all those territories. And then we take the partner lists of reps and I chop them up and connect our reps with all those partners in their region so they can work with them. Regional partners are great, but they're really only for those reps that are in their region. National partners help us with everything, right? And we can reach more reps with a national partner by doing events, doing webinars. Yeah, try to get on partner sales calls to pitch our product. So I want them talking about us, right? National partner reps, national partners, I should say, if their reps have a positive experience, they all talk and they have these company-wide sales calls, and they might step up and say, hey, I was working with John McCabe and his reps were great. We closed the deal in 2 months and I made a really nice commission check. Everybody in the company hears it. And then our rep get the residual of that. Their regional reps will call up and say, hey, I heard you guys closed a deal with so-and-so. And like, yeah, it was a great deal. Hey, how do I get involved with you, right? My focus list is national. We're global. We have global customers, we have global reps, and if it's a larger scale partner, even better, because then we can work with them everywhere.
But the problem with these global providers is sometimes they will not do business with you until you have X amount of revenue. So that's one of the things they ask you. They say,
True.
hey, what's the size of the company? Unless you do X amount, because they see it almost justifiably too, is say, okay, and if you only do $5 million a year, you're not worth my time. I can carve out like 800,000, but is it worth my time? No. How do you overcome the initial inception of creating a relationship when your revenues are low?
So international partners are a whole different beast unto themselves, I should say. What I've typically done from an international partner strategy, work with distribution partners who have multiple resellers underneath them that they can work with. you have to pay a little bit. You have to pay for a funded head if you want to get somebody who's going to market and promote you to the resellers, but it's worth it because then they bring in the opportunity. Standalone service providers, very rare internationally. They'll have some, but typically distribution is the way to go. And there's some very big distribution partners out there, Exclusive Networks and WWT, and there's a bunch of really great ones, right? We typically will take that approach internationally. Sometimes we don't even have a rep in a territory and we need that funded head to help us. But it's difficult, right? You're right. Some customers won't even buy from you if you're not physically in that territory. So it's beneficial to have a partner that can support you in that regard.
In specifically, if you're only doing, let's say, $5 million a year as a vendor, and you're still looking for channel partners, but then the big folks don't want to deal with you because you're doing too little revenue for them to even pay attention to you, what would you do then?
So sometimes these larger distribution partners will have a group or a piece of their organization that deals with what they call emerging technology partners. And they're better suited. They're better suited to handle someone like us who doesn't have the revenue to meet the criteria to work with them. And they're actually great to work with. The smaller piece of that distribution partner, they're more focused. They like working with emerging tech because if it really explodes, they're along for the ride up until the point when the parent company says, all right, we're taking them and we're going to work with them. But there's always a way to do business outside of the US. And there are small distribution partners that will take you on. They're independent. They're not the big conglomerates, but I work with some great partners in like the Australia, New Zealand, ANZ regions, Japan.
And then if you wanted to do that for the US and Canada or the North America, what would you do because there are 5,000 vendors out there, and there's several thousand vendors with let's say under $25 million in revenue. What do they do to sign up channel partners that don't want to deal with small firms?
That's where distribution in the US is a good fit too. Typically, like the US partners and vendors aren't really distribution focused. They're more like, let's go resell with this. Vendors are going to resellers, and that's how they work, service providers. But distribution in the US is equally as important as international. And like a TD SYNNEX, for example, great distribution partner that will help you to get involved. They have emerging tech programs as well, and they'll get you involved, and you can actually provide the TD SYNNEX ecosystem of partners everything about your product, and then they will go out and promote and market it. And then the resellers will come to you, right? So there's never, it's impossible for a vendor to not figure out some way to go to market with a partner. There's something out there for everyone. You just have to figure out what it is. You have to ask questions, and you have to get aligned properly. I happen to know more, and I've been in the space longer, and I know the partners, and I know I can do things with them. I know how to get deals to them, and I can work with resellers outside of like a distribution relationship. But I really see the value of that distribution relationship because you're exponentially growing your pipeline with so many more resellers that are coming through like one quote through that distribution partner.
And let me ask you, I would like to dive into a few minutes into the managed service provider, and I have a bunch of questions in regards to that.
Yeah.
But before let me ask you about the kind of the master agent program, where there's a couple entities in the US that it has they flaunt thousands of independent reps, and the idea is to add you to their roster of assigned vendors, and then you're off to the races. Do you have an opinion of how successful that is?
So in cybersecurity, we don't really deal with master agents. We deal more like MSSPs. There's master MSSPs that will deal with hundreds or thousands of small MSPs that want security, but they don't have the personnel, the money to buy the tech and support it. I work with them. I don't work with like master agents that are just resellers only. I just haven't seen it. And I find that might be an interesting way to go. For my money, the master MSSPs are phenomenal to work with. If they adopt your technology, it's like mailbox money, man. You're making money as you sleep because they're buying and buying and buying, and they want your technology. We do work with them, and I have an understanding of that space.
In speaking of managed service providers and managed security service providers, it's one of the fastest growing segments
Crazy.
in cybersecurity. And there's some element, maybe talk to me about the overall market and why do you think that is? And then secondly, as a segue to that, why is it so important for vendors to engage with these type of partners to be successful?
Yeah, you're right. It's a white hot space right now. There's a lot of companies that are MSSPs or MSPs, and they're private equity companies that are buying up multiple MSPs to create a bigger MSP, MDR provider. And it's just a very hot space. Now, what I've seen over the past couple of years, like 10 years that I've been in this space, is companies want to have the most protection. And if they like your product, that's great, but are they going to have the personnel to support it? Are they going to be able to respond to all the alerts? Do they have a SOC? Do they have multiple analysts that are going to be able to do all the work that's needed to help a breach from happening? And the answer is no. If you're not a really big company, if you're a small and medium-sized company, you're not going to have that type of personnel. So having a managed security service provider is beneficial to that company because they're paying a flat rate per head for not just the technology, but the bodies to help support the technology, right? And it's just become a more, I don't want to say aggressive, it's just been a growth engine for that space. And companies understand they can't do it all, and they have those service providers that can help them do that, right? And they also are easy to upgrade technology and get better without the company having to do that, because they might not want to upgrade a technology that's going to cost them thousands of dollars more than they spent. But an MSP, they will, because they're getting very aggressive pricing and they've built in their margins and they built their model so they make money, even though they're not going to increase their costs because they're going to be updating the technology and giving that customer the absolute best security service they can.
And when you're building a channel program specifically for MSSPs or MSPs, there are a lot of things you have to consider, right? So from a product perspective, for example, it has to be multi-tenant. You have to have the ability to maybe automatic billing. There's a slew of issues on the product side, but also on the channel side. Talk to me about what's unique about building a program specifically for these service providers.
Yeah, it's kind of a sweet spot for me, the MSSP space. I've built a lot of programs for vendors. Multi-tenancy is, you're right. Number one, if your product isn't multi-tenant, don't bother. You're not going to have a MSSP that wants to open 500 screens to manage a client. You have to be multi-tenant. You have to have a tiered pricing structure. It's got to be aggressive. You might think, some CROs think, oh, that price is too low at $1.50 an endpoint. But you know what? They're going to be buying for thousands of endpoints, and you'll make money on it, and they'll make money on it, and they'll bring more and more customers to you. So you got to have like an aggressive tiered structure that they know what their gross profit is, and they know the growth, what they're going to make. You also have to have the right support and enablement in place for them. Probably repeating myself, I just think training partners and being able to support them is so important. You got to have the marketing materials for them. You got to be able to jump in and help sell if they need you to. Typically, they don't. maybe after the first 2 or 3 deals, but you got to be able to support them on a sales effort. But they really are, they're all about making money for their business and protecting their clients. So if you can give them all those key components, they also want consumption-based model buying where, they buy like 1,000 one month and maybe 100 next month and then 20,000 next month. They want to be able to do that. They also want, monthly billing. If you can't accommodate them on those things, it's really difficult. They don't buy an annual contract like enterprise customers. We try to sell enterprise customers a 12-month or 24-month contract. MSSPs don't do that. They want month to month because unfortunately their business can flip. Their customers can leave on a dime. They bill monthly, so they don't really hold their customers into any contract. You got to be able to accommodate them in that regard.
And that can be a problem as well because the traditional vendors like to have the annual subscription. If it's a SaaS model, or maybe if it's a one-time and then there's a service and support associated with it. But then, as you mentioned, it's for MSSPs, it's all about MRR, monthly recurring revenue. And so therefore they cannot necessarily sometimes commit to that. So there's a bit of a mismatch of wants between the vendor and the partners. How do you deal with that? And John, I didn't say it's going to be easy. These are the questions are so. Go ahead.
It's important. If you don't have the basic components in place, you don't even bother talking to those types of partners because they won't work with you. And it's not because they don't like you. Just they've got to be able to transact their business the way they know how to do it. Right. It could be tough if there isn't the basic components in place, like the multi-tenancy and the pricing structure and the billing mechanisms, and your management won't do it or pushes back. It could be difficult. What I try to promote and preach to my executives is this is a very profitable type of business to go after. I've talked to several cybersecurity companies that their board is telling them, go after MSPs and MSSPs only right now. It's where we need to be, right? So they're the pretty girl at the dance right now, and everybody wants to dance with them because they're the ones selling. And in a bad economy like we had over the past year and a half, MSSPs and MSPs are selling, right? And the vendors that are aligned with them and are selling to them, they're doing really well. They're doing well. They're not having layoffs. They're selling and making money, right? It's a very lucrative and hot space to be in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We're running out of time, but I got a couple other questions to wrap it up. And this has been really phenomenal.
Yeah.
So how do you keep in touch with what's happening in terms of innovation from sales strategies, in terms of tech, specifically for partners? Again, we don't operate in a bubble. There's an innovation happening all the time in that space as well. Maybe it's from partnership portals to sales enablement and so on. How do you keep abreast of all of the innovation, and how do you adopt some of these technologies, and how do you know which one to actually go ahead and pursue?
So number one, I'm a long-standing member in an organization called Partnership Leaders. It's executives and individual contributors that are part of this community. And we have a Slack channel and we share knowledge, and I help my colleagues with problems that they're having. They help me. They share templates, they share framework programs. It's just a very strong community to help me understand what's going on from a channel sales perspective. I also keep up to date on technical websites and newsletters like MSP Alert and MSP Success and things like that I can understand what's going on in that space and what technologies are hot. I actually learned that risk and compliance was very hot in the MSP space last year. And our product was very compliance and risk centric. So went after them to build service programs around it, right? Other than that, just partner portals, I've implemented probably 8 or 9 different PRMs in my 10 years. And I know a lot of the players. I've looked at them, examined them, I work with them. and I'm pseudo expert on that space, and I understand what works and what doesn't. And honestly, if you're building a channel program, spend the money on a PRM. It's vital. It's lifeblood. I drive that into my partners. The partner portal is so important. I train their sales ops people because it's a way for you to understand how the relationship works. All the matrix that partner portal gives you, sales, pipeline, sales close, sales loss, everything. You can go back to your report to your CRO and say, hey, here's what's working, here's what's not, right? So that's really, I stay in tune with that. I do shows, I do MSP focus events. Partnership Leaders has an annual event every August called Catalyst. Catalyst is a way to rub elbows and really get face-to-face with your colleagues. And there are vendors that come in that help you with your job. There's PRM providers, there's compensation providers, and there's different things that you could learn just from going to events. That's how I keep up. I'm always looking to learn and get better. Someone I really love and admire and trust in my life told me there's never a bad time for education, right? And I believe it. You always have to be better. You always have to get better. Never be satisfied with just doing what you're doing. Always want to get better. And I live by that.
And if you had a crystal ball and say, what's the future of channel? What's the channel is going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years? Because we've seen tremendous developments just in the past 2-3 years. What would that be? What areas of innovation or change that you can maybe make the prediction?
I think channel's going to be here for a long time. I think some vendors might even use channel as a way to have a sales arm. Yeah, I've seen it happen where companies have utilized just channel relationships to sell for them. I think there's a lot of innovation, a lot of progress that's been made so far for channel, but I don't think it's ever going away. People get scared that AI might replace jobs. I don't think that's going to happen. Vendors need a way to get their product out in the market and sell. And if they can't afford to bring on a full-blown sales staff, because sales reps are expensive. You can get a rep from anywhere from $75,000 to $150,000 a year, plus commissions, benefits, all that. It's expensive for a startup. Channel helps make that happen a lot less expensively and help you grow your pipeline.
And John, if maybe describe just who would be your ideal customer engagement, somebody that you like to work with, and potentially you already highlighted what kind of services you can provide. Maybe just briefly do that as well. And then the last thing is, what's the easiest way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah. Like ideal customer, anyone that wants to buy. Anyone that's willing to buy my products. I love you all. Open your checkbooks up. No. But our ideal customer profile is anywhere from 525,000 employees, and that fits into the model of the partners that we work with. They're in that same world. Certainly bigger opportunities that might involve more complication, but that's why a partner might help you there. They might be connected to the procurement arm of the company and can help wade through all the red tape and baloney that it goes through for procurement. So we like to align, again, going back to how you build the relationship and the framework out, get an understanding of their ideal customer profile as well as knowing what yours it is and figure it out.
And John, personally for you, what kind of companies do you like to engage with?
For me, partner-wise?
Just for you as a consultant or somebody to work with, what's your ideal DNA of a company that likes to work with somebody like yourself?
I like the startup companies that are opening their eyes to that have an executive team that's willing to do what it takes to put the effort in and get the work done to build out a channel. Startups are in my DNA right now. I've worked with, I don't know, God, how many over the past 10 years. So those are really the types of companies I like to work with. I do like more established companies as well. Maybe that they have a situation or a need for something to be turned around or redone, that is another specialty of mine. I've been able to turn programs around from just basically not producing to being successful. So those are the types of companies I like to work with.
And what's the easiest way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I have my own website. It's called the Partner Architects Group. It's www.partnerarchitectsgroup.com. I do try to help small customers uncover their perfect channel profile, the framework of a program. And you can reach me at john@partnerarchitectsgroup.com, and be willing and happy to talk to you about if you have any issues with your channel or you're looking to do something. I'm available.
Yeah, and you're active on LinkedIn as well, right? You always post.
Yes.
You're part of the community, and you give back
I like
as well.
to post a lot. I like to promote my partners. I like to make sure everybody knows what I'm doing.
Fantastic. John, it's been a really great conversation. I learned a lot. I can tell you that. And again, I encourage for everyone who's listening to this to reach out and just say hi, or just if you have any question for John, specifically around partnerships and industry. And until then, thank you very much for all who joined us today, and much, much appreciated. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Thank you, David. It was really a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.